Somebody this week sent me this picture. I liked it. They said, with it, they said, Chad, if you're having a bad day, realize it could be worse. I thought that was good. Consider the case of the man who lives in Illinois who left the cold streets of Chicago to vacation with his wife in warm and sunny Florida. He left a day before his wife and arrived there a day before his wife because his wife was on a business trip and she was going to meet up with him the next day. And when he got there, he decided to send his wife an email, but he realized that he had lost the little scrap of paper that her email address was on, and so he tried to type it in by memory. He was only one letter off, but that sent his email not to his wife, but to a preacher's wife whose husband had just passed away the day before. When she got on her computer and she read the email, she let out a horrible scream, fell to the floor in a dead faint. Her family ran in to see what was the matter, and they read this note on the computer screen. Dearest wife, just got checked in. Everything prepared for your arrival tomorrow. P.S. It sure is hot down here. Regardless of age or status or income or race or any other notable difference between us, one thing we all share in common is that in this life we will receive our share of disturbing messages and we'll receive our share of, because we're in church, we'll call it crap, right? Jesus said we would. Jesus said these words, as he was approaching his end of his ministry here on earth, he said these words to his closest followers. He said, in this world, you followers of Jesus, in this world, you followers of Jesus, you will have trouble. And we know that is true. We also know that there is nothing funny about being stuck between a rock and a hard place. She knows what it's like to be stuck between a rock and a hard place as a single mom. When the baby came into the picture, Dad was no longer interested, and so he just kind of left. Oh, he shows up every once in a while when it's convenient, and he rides in with some games and some fun, and the little girl loves him to death, but then he's not there the rest of the year. He's not there to support financially. He's not there to support emotionally. He's just not there. And she's working full time. She's doing her best to make ends meet, and still, it's not enough. She gets side jobs. It's still not enough. And what hurts her the most is that though she tries to never speak negatively about the little girl's dad, all it seems to do is make the little girl want her dad more and want her less. And every once in a while, she would be lying if she didn't say that the temptation comes into her head that she really wishes some days she could get in the car and drive as far and as long as the gas in the tank would take her and just leave behind all the responsibilities. Now, some would judge her for that, but that's the ones who don't understand, because she knows what it's like to be in between a rock and a hard place and feel like just giving up. Because sometimes when life gets so hard and the pressure is so constant and the stress is so overwhelming that you just feel like saying, I can't take any more. If anything else happens, I can't handle it. The best thing I know to do right now is just throw in the towel, give up. That's how it feels sometimes between a rock and a hard place, doesn't it? It does. Pardon him if he seems a little cynical about this week's elections, but he is cynical about them. He doesn't think anything's going to change for him other than the name on the Oval Office door. But where he lives, he'll probably still be out of work, he says. He'll probably still be trying to look his wife in the eye and convince her that he's not lying when he says everything's going to be okay, honey. He'll still be looking in the eyes of his kids and feeling like a complete failure because he knows that it's just a matter of time until he won't be able to dip into his retirement and be penalized for it anymore before he's not going to be able to provide for their most basic of needs. And for him, he's way past panic. He's entered into hopelessness. Man, stuck between a rock and a hard place, it gets easy to feel hopeless. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no silver lining behind the cloud. There's just nothing. And when you're doing everything you can do and all you get is nothing, what do you feel? Hopeless. But I don't need to tell you and give you examples of how it feels to be stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I believe you know. In fact, I just want to have you help me for a minute here. Just talk out loud, somebody from this section, and give me a word or two that describes what it feels like to be between a rock and a hard place. Somebody give me a word. Frustrating, scared. How about you guys over here?
Empty.
Desperate, panicked. What did you say over here? Empty. Good. What about over here? What do you guys hear? What's it feel like to be stuck between a rock and a hard place? Hollow. Good word. Out of control. What's that? Trapped. Yes. You know what it feels to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. In fact, I want to invite you, when you came in, you should have received a little index card or just get a scrap piece of paper. And actually, if somebody next to you doesn't have one, rip it in half and share with them, or give them part of your bulletin. In fact, I need one. I forgot to get one for the Greg, can I have half of yours? Thanks, man. Here's a half for somebody else. Actually, I have a pen. I just don't have paper. So just on the screen here, write down a rock and a hard place you find yourself in. And then write a word or two that describes how that makes you feel right now. You say, oh, everything's good for me. Well, praise God. Don't feel guilty for that. That's good. But maybe you can write down a rock and a hard place that someone you love is going through. And because they're going through it, it's affecting you. And how's it affecting you? Write it down, a word or two. So just jot down your rock and a hard place or someone's that you love, and then a word or two that describes how that leaves you feeling. Just take as long as you need to. Feel free to keep on filling it out. If something comes to mind later that describes it better for you, just get that out and jot it down. Just think on that for a little bit. Because the truth of the matter is, I think most of us here know how this feels. I think most of us here knows what it feels like to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. But quite honestly, what I would like to start experiencing, what I'd like to start knowing what it feels like, is instead of being stuck between a rock and a hard place all the time, I would kind of like to know what it feels like to have a rock to stand on. You know what I mean? I mean, not just know it in my head and be able to say, on Christ the solid rock I stand, and then go out of here and fall apart. I mean, really know what it's like to have a rock to stand on, no matter what's going on in my life. And David was one who found that. In Psalm 18, it's in your Bible or in the back of your bulletin if you look at it with me. Psalm 18, verses 1 through 3. Maybe you just want to close your eyes and just listen to these words. Maybe that'd be even better. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God, my rock, I will flee to him. He is my shield and the horn of the strength of my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I am saved from my enemies. Now, it's easy to read those words and say, you know what, that's great, David, good for you, but you must not be going through the same kind of stuff I'm going through, because it sounds like you've got it pretty easy. Well, in case you think that, let me read on verses 4 through 5. It's not printed for you, so just listen. The cords of death entangled me, David says. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. David, sure, in Psalm 18 it's true that David writes this psalm in response to God having delivered him out of times of turmoil. But the only reason that David, now in a time of victory, can say, God is my rock, is because he found God as his rock while while death still entangled him and the torrents of destruction was overwhelming him. David found God as a rock while he was in the midst of the difficulty, not just after God delivered him from it. And I think that if we think about it, that when trouble comes to us as followers of Christ, we have a choice to make. We have more than one option, even though it sometimes doesn't feel like it. We can stay here stuck between a rock and a hard place, or somehow, by the grace of God that comes way beyond anything we could do on our own, we can find a rock of God to stand on, so that when the winds blow, they may blow us, but we're not blown over. So that though the threat is great, the peace becomes greater and greater. Though the sorrow is real, the joy is not robbed. Those difficulties mount, our strength doesn't have to give way. Though lies bombard us, truth can begin to sustain us. It's the difference between being stuck between a rock and a hard place and having a rock to stand on. And my question again is, how do I live there experientially? Not just in the head and try to convince myself of it, but how do I truly live there? How do I get up on a rock and have something to stand on no matter what life gives me? And I believe that David, in this really short little sentence here, gives us some insight into that. He says, my God, my rock, I will flee to him. My God, my rock, I will flee to him. It happens when we make this move from stuck to standing on the rock. It happens when the God of the universe becomes my God.